Hello and welcome to UAT Time within the United Countries special by First Ukraine. You can find us on the frequencies available on our website firstua.com. I'm Sergey Velichanskiy.
And I am Olivier Vedrine. UAT Time is dedicated to bring Ukraine and Europe closer to each other by introducing the real Ukraine to the rest of the world.
To give you a better picture about the true Ukraine, we bring unique people from different fields of activities to our program. Ukraine's situation is neither ideal nor it is that bad. I do know, though, that we don't want to stop there.
Our guest today is Jean Baptiste Pigeon, General Manager of Intercontinental Kyiv.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you very much for stopping by for a cup of tea.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Well, we have a lot of questions as usually, and probably the first question, we'd like to get to know you a little better. How many years have you been in Ukraine, and what is your general impression about being here?
Well, thank you for asking the question. I think it's very interesting. I've joined Ukraine almost 3 years ago. I came here in January 2013.
Okay.
And I've went through a transition period, which is obviously very interesting and historical for the country. I came from already a very strong international background in the past, so it was a new discovery for me. I mean, being in Eastern Europe, something I've never did. I've worked in Africa, I've worked in the Middle East, I've worked in Far East, I've lived in South America.
So you do have cross-cultural experience.
Oh, definitely, sir. Definitely.
Okay. That's interesting because it's one thing to be successful in the West in business, but it's totally different if you go to a totally different cultural system. I mean, we're talking about just day-to-day culture, but let alone we imply business culture, interpersonal cultures.
Definitely. It's very important, and I mean, this is the beauty of the business I've decided to go on 32 years ago. I've joined the hotel industry and the Intercontinental Group 32 years ago. And wow. I've worked in 11 different countries, 13 different hotels. And definitely, I totally agree, the ability to have that adaptability and flexibility in dealing with different cultures, different religions, different environments, made us richer, but as well allows us to contribute a little bit, humbly, but we can bring a little stone of knowledge we've been collecting around the world, and that could contribute, and hopefully I'll be able to contribute as well to the future development of Ukraine within the tourism industry.
You know, while we are at cultural differences, I just thought that probably one of the major hindrances in the business is the difference in of different cultures, how they value time.
Definitely.
Like being on time. Like we know the German culture, and we know some other cultures that, you know, sometimes being on time means, yes, it being just right then on that time. Or being on time is being 15 minutes ahead of time.
Exactly.
And in some other cultures, being on time is like 15 minutes after, it's still being on time.
Still being on time, yes, definitely. I mean, and again, that's exactly true what you're saying. In Japan, you never come on time. You always come 15 to 10 minutes before.
Okay.
Minimum.
All right.
Minimum. Where sometimes in some other countries or South America, or even in Africa, I mean, being 1 hour, 2 hours delay is not important, because they have a different notion and different perception of what times means.
Well, you probably know my next question, but how about Ukraine?
Well, it all depends. It all depends on the individual. I wouldn't like to generalize.
Yes, well, that's okay.
And I think it's important. Never generalize things, but as a matter of principle, people tend to be on time or slightly delay, but not to an extent where it becomes a burden.
Okay.
Now the problem in Ukraine is not to be on time or not to be on time. The problem is the process of management.
Well, that's different
because
issue.
you know that I am doing some business in Ukraine, and really the problem is how to manage and this cultural aspect of post-Soviet system of management. And for me, this is I think maybe you would be agree, but the key point is really the difference of management and how to manage for me.
All right. Okay. But you're moving to a very systematic issue, which is going to take probably years to develop.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
But sometimes the cultural issue, it will probably stay as long as the culture stays, you know. So that's why
I think it's important to keep the culture. I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about globalization, and globalization is the future, and it's not the future, it's the present. However, I think that it's important that each country, each nation keeps a little bit of its culture, a little bit of its particularity. Mm-hmm. Now, you're talking about managing, definitely. I mean, I tend to agree with you. We are in a system today in Ukraine where control is important. Mm-hmm. It might be not that important in the industry I'm working in, because it's quite a rather new industry. Mm-hmm. So I think that I have the privilege and the chance to work with people that have that drive and really that ambition to go forward. Mm-hmm. But yes, control is still needed. But in most of the countries, you know, you need to be on top of things. Delegating is one thing, controlling is another thing. What we miss, and the most important in our industry, what we miss is a proper education system. Okay. Because there's no proper education system within the hotel industry and tourism industry. At least I think.
In Ukraine?
I think. Yes.
It's interesting that some universities offer that.
Yeah, but you know, I'm talking about basics. I mean, a good cook school. I mean, we hire cooks that are great. They have talent. Okay. But sometimes they miss the basics. Oh. And the basics are what are going to make you successful. Okay. Or fail.
And for the service, for what you are thinking, because I saw when I go to some Ukrainian restaurant or some big difference with France, for example. Exactly. What do you think about the?
Again, I think we have a great population, young generations that are willing to do well. Yeah. We need to train them. We need to train them, and this is something for the last 3 years I've been in the hotel and in Kyiv and in Ukraine, has been one of the big priorities I had. It's really investing, because for me it's an investment, it's not an expense, but really investing into the development of our people. I have, for example, few expats, what we call expatriates, foreigners in the hotel that are managing some key functions. But my objective is to avoid having that in the future, because we should be able to find the talents locally and to develop those talents. Now, it will take time. I mean, this will not happen from one day to the other, but we have the potential. I'm very positive in that respect.
Okay.
No, I agree.
What is really a problem that comes all the way from the Soviet system is the approach to service and the approach to identifying the issue of quality of service. You know, now we see some good changes with restaurant business, where new generation owners really set up some good quality approach in the restaurant in the restaurants. But how about hotel business in Ukraine? What do you see as the tendency?
I mean, I think we're progressing quite well in that respect as well. I mean, you know, people travel. Ukrainians travel today, something they might not have done 20, 25 years ago. So they're able to compare. They're becoming much more demanding. Yeah. And I think that our industry is in a certain way able to anticipate the new needs of the customers. And you've mentioned, I mean, you have new restaurants, extremely trendy, that are following that demand. So again, I mean, my speech is very positive in that respect. There's still a long way to go, but I'm very positive.
I am agreeing. Yes.
Olivier, you travel across Ukraine. Do you usually stay in hotels?
Yeah.
Okay, so what is your observation? Because here's the thing, we're talking to a general manager, Jean Baptiste, of a good, I mean, one of the most prominent chain in the world.
Yeah.
Definitely all this, you know, central traditions are passed to the branches as well. Mm-hmm. So that's a bit different situation. Now we're talking about, you know, solo little individual hotels all over the country. And what is your observation?
You know, I was in Lviv, in Ivano-Frankivsk, Uzhgorod, and Kharkiv, and Dnipropetrovsk. I think you have a new generation of manager of hotel in Ukraine, and for example, I was in Kharkiv, and they invited me to an very old hotel, and everything was already awful. And after that, I said, no, I cannot sleep here, it's impossible. And they invited me to another hotel, but that was a new one with a new manager, and maybe not very old, 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
But what can I see is a new generation,
Exactly.
new generation of manager, new generation of hotel in Ukraine. In Lviv, this is obvious. In Lviv, you have very nice new hotel. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And in Dnipropetrovsk, you have also new hotel. But in Kharkiv, that was a little bit more difficult to find a great or nice
style.
hotel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's interesting. Because I remember back then in 2012, mm-hmm. prior to your coming here, Ukraine hosted one of the biggest events in Europe back then, Euro 2012
Yeah.
football championship. And prior to that, a lot of construction had been going on, and some of the hopes were that this championship was going to bring infrastructure, including hotels. But then what happened at that moment, you know, months or 2 months ahead of the championship, all the new hotels, they raised their prices, I mean, as high as the sky. And so the people actually, even though their teams played in Ukraine, they chose to stay in Poland. Yeah. Because Poland co-hosted the championship as well. Because comparing to 300 euro per night in Kyiv, the price in Poland was 60 euro per night. So of course, I mean, they're not insane. So they, so as a result, we didn't have that many people. So what do you think about the luxury segment and the price formation in the hotels?
Well, you have to look at a different aspect. The example of the Euro 2012 is nothing specific to Ukraine, I'm afraid to say. I mean, those are experiences I've lived in many other countries. Okay. I remember I was in Bahrain for the first Grand Prix in the Middle East. I mean, the race went as you said, the sky was the limit, which is ridiculous. And people were staying in Saudi, not to stay in Bahrain, because it was 4 times the price. Okay. Now, the other aspect is that obviously the Euro 2012 allowed to develop new infrastructures, and that was very positive. If you look at the metro, you had finally signs in English, something you didn't have before 2012. Yes. And it might be something that is not that important for a local, because they understand. Yes. But if you want to develop tourism, you need to do some adjustment, and in terms of infrastructure. So hopefully we will talk about the potentiality we have there. But the rate positioning is based on few factors. First of all, you have to consider a palace and a luxury hotel like ours. I mean, the investment is obviously rather important if you compare it with a hotel of a different category. And as an investor, you look for return on investment as well. So that already allows to say that indeed some hotels are more expensive than others, considering that factor. And then you have to consider the costs as well that you have to endure in the location you are working in. And even though we might not be one of the most expensive countries in terms of labor, but you had other things that are very expensive. I mean, energy became very expensive. Importing products became very expensive. So, I mean, let's face it, we're a commercial entity. We're here to make money. Now, we're not here to abuse the customer, definitely not.
Sure.
But at least we have to cover a certain margin and certain expenses. So I think that the rate positioning today in Kyiv, with the supply you have, something that was not the case 3, 4, let's say 5 to 7 years ago, I think that we've reached a level which is at international positioning, which is correct today, which was not the case before. I know that the rates 5, 7 years ago were, I mean, we were almost as expensive as London or Paris.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the luxury sector in Kyiv, in Ukraine, is very important. But in Kyiv, it's obvious that a lot of Ukrainian people take care about luxury, and I was very surprised about that, really, because you know, from French old education, we don't like to show. You know, we don't like to show that we have a big car. We don't like to show that we are rich and all that. And in Ukraine, they like to show, and I think the luxury sector is very important because they need to show that they are successful. And this is, I think, because Ukraine is on the road to economical development, and this is a new generation of businessmen. But if you go to France, and I must underline to France, if you are rich and successful, in your education, you don't like to show. This is obvious. This is difference of culture.
Yeah, we have to live with that. You know, that's the way it is. Coming back to the hotel and tourist business, along with some big hotels, international, representing international chains, as a competition, there came local or single apartments,
Right.
you know, right downtown, and sometimes the travelers choose to stay in the apartment, understanding that they're not going to get the service of the you know, international hotel, but at the same time they have some benefits.
Right.
So is that a competition for you?
Well, this is again something which is not specific to Ukraine.
Yeah.
This is something we live all around the world, and indeed the hotel industry as a whole, I mean, is now competing with residentials. And with, let me talk about Airbnb. You have today in Paris more rooms in Airbnb than you have hotel rooms. Airbnb, I don't know if you know, it's like the Herbert.
Yes, international.
And exactly. So, yes, we live in an evolving world, and it is our duty as hotel operators to adjust our offering in order to remain, first of all, competitive and attractive to our customers. And this is where I think that I have the privilege to work for Intercontinental Hotels Group for the last 32 years, and I think that we're very successful in that respect.
Right.
No.
What do you think about the future economical developments here and in Ukraine? What are your hopes and fears?
Well, I won't talk about fears. My fear might be the time it will take to go where we are. We are in a country which has so much potential. And I've heard that for the last 3 years, and I've realized myself that I'm saying the same thing than what I've been hearing for the last 3 years. This country has so much potential. We have a great people with great educational levels that are willing to go forward, that have the drive really to take the country forward. If I talk about my industry, hotel and tourism, we are at the beginning We're not reaching the end of the beginning. We are really at the beginning, the premises of the development of tourism in Ukraine. Ukraine was known for different areas that are under a difficult situation now, but I mean, Lviv has understood that many years ago, and they have developed something which made the destination attractive. But I don't see why Kiev, Lviv, or other cities in the country couldn't become the Prague and the Budapest and Bucharest of tomorrow. For the last 20 years, whole Europe went to spend a weekend in Prague.
Yeah.
Now, for that, you need different things. You need to liberalize the airline system.
Okay.
Because we need low costs. Now, I'm not saying that we should bring here cheap customers, but if you look at the airline statistics, 70% of the travelers now are traveling in low cost, even businessmen. Why is that? Because why should I spend 1,000 when I can spend 500 to do a 2 hours, 3 hours flight?
Exactly.
I mean, we're not looking for comfort and luxury here.
Yeah.
We're looking for efficiency.
Okay.
And so we have to liberalize that aspect. We have to work on the infrastructures, definitely. I mean, I'm always, I mean, flabbergasted when I see the quality of the roads, which it's a pity. It's a pity. and those aspects are really the image of the country, the image of the city. So liberalize the airfield, develop and work on improving the infrastructures, and then we have everything to be successful.
Yeah.
We have everything to be successful. We have the chance to have already very good and well-settled local branded hotels. We have now international brands, which is a plus because it gives even more exposure to the external world.
Exactly.
And I mean, if you put all that together with a clear understanding from the government, from the guys who are really looking after that, that will create employments, that will bring foreign currencies, and again, the sky is the limit in that respect. I mean, I brought some statistics from the World Travel Organization with me because really I strongly believe in it. I mean, we've reached 1.3 billion travelers in 2014. The statistics, and they're planning to have 1.8 billion travelers around the world by 2030. They come by air. 60% of the travelers go through air. And something which is definitely the new trend is that 52% of the travelers worldwide, I'm talking here, are leisure travelers. So we see a shift where before the travelers were mainly businessmen, etc. Now we shift for a bigger amount of travelers being for leisure, and this is the future of part of the future of Ukraine, but which could contribute largely to the GDP of the country. So. I'm really passionate about this subject.
You have to develop your tourism sector because you have a very nice country, very old monuments, and you have to develop all that. It's amazing when you go to Lviv, Uzhgorod, or the place, or Dnipropetrovsk. You see beautiful things and old building. You have to restore because you have a very beautiful architecture.
Well, but restoring again involves investments.
But the return can be huge, sir.
Sure.
The return can be huge.
I agree.
As I said, in terms of employment, in terms of contribution to the GDP.
But the investment reminds me, talking about investment reminds me about corruption. So hopefully we'll fight that as well. Unfortunately, because without that, nothing of what we have just talked about really will happen in the near future.
For sure.
Or it's going to take, and we will always remain a potential country, but not really the country where people, all of Europe would want to spend the weekend.
Sure. But I think that as per the agriculture, we have a beautiful soil, as you said, archaeological, historical, architecture, I mean everything, culture.
Yeah.
The soil is there. We just need to put the seed. And that seed will do a great forest.
Yeah,
Well,
totally agree.
thank you for being such optimist and working here in Ukraine, because people like you show us a different perspective, from the outside, and it's good to get things and ideas to learn and to work on, and even good to hear some compliments on the things where we are successful. It was United Country UAT time by First Ukraine. Our guest was Jean Baptiste Pigeon, General Manager of Intercontinental Kyiv. Thanks for joining us for a cup of tea.
Olivier Vedrine and Sergey Velichanskiy were working for you in the studio. Stay with us and we will show to you the real Ukraine.
Thank you for being with us. Have a good day and see you soon.
Thank you.